In 2024, buying a house has never been more challenging, except for people like me using creative finance. It's never been easier. While everybody else is struggling on the sidelines, having a hard time getting bank loans and high interest rates, here I am in Montana on a house that I bought with no credit check, no bank whatsoever, and only $1 as a down payment. Sounds like a scam. It might be. I might have to break this all down for you and show you what's possible and show you where I find these deals, how I structure them, and what the heck am I gonna do with a 20-acre parcel, 8,000 square feet, and a 3,500 square foot barn, all to myself with my family? I'm actually gonna make money on this bad boy. Let me show you how. Subject to and seller financing, in my opinion, needs a full whiteboard breakdown for people to visualize something that they might not have ever heard of before. My name is Morby, the founder of SubTo.com. I have perfected the process of subject to investing. I'm known as the SubTo King. I've done more SubTo deals than anybody else in the country, and my team dominates in subject to transactions. Most common question I get is, how do I buy a house with no money down? How do I buy a house with no credit? How do I avoid working with banks? Pace, are there ways to buy a house in 2024, 2025 without going to a bank and getting 7%, 8%, 9% interest rates? Is there a way to buy a house without 20% down? Is there a way to buy a house with literally no money out of pocket? The answer is yes, and we're gonna be talking about that in this video. Another question you might run into is if you are a seller of a home and you're underwater, maybe you're going through a tough time, maybe you've listed your house on the market and it's not moving, can I use creative finance to sell that property? Or maybe you're the agent representing that seller having a hard time moving that property. So if you're either A, a buyer, or B, a seller, creative finance can help you get out of a situation that you might be in or into a situation that you've been trying to get into by getting a down payment, getting credit, all of those types of things. We're also gonna be going into all the bullshit that I hear every single day, all of the myths that I used to believe. Why? Because the education system teaches us how to be drones. It teaches us how to be line workers and manufacturers. So unfortunately, everything you've been preconditioned to understand, like, I need 20% down, that's bullshit. I'm gonna go to a bank right now and get 7% interest, that's also bullshit. We're gonna go through a couple of these things right now and break down why these things are not true. So 20% down, I have not done a 20% down deal in ever, literally ever. And what you focus on will expand. And so when I focus on creative finance, it's all the deals I look at are usually 5% down or less. And so now people are gonna say, well, I don't have 5% down either, Pace. You said, how do I buy a house with no money down? Well, we'll get into that a little bit later into the video of the sliding scale of types of deals out there. There are a lot of deals out there, no money down, 0% interest seller finance. There's some deals that are like my RV park that I bought with 5% down at 4% interest. It's a varying sliding degree of different types of deals. We'll get into that a little bit as well. 7% interest. This is an absolute myth. I have not had a 7% interest loan ever. The amount of interest I pay on the average SubTo and seller finance deal is under 3%, under 3%. Sometimes I'm getting 0%, sometimes I'm getting 5%, but the average is under 3%. This is an absolute myth. I would never go out and get a 7% interest rate loan ever in my life. You need a real estate agent. I do enjoy working with real estate agents that are educated in creative finance, but the fact is 80% of my deals do not require an agent. In fact, I prefer the agent to be out of the deal because they make the deal challenging. Needing a bank. I have not used a bank in the last 2,000 transactions. The last 2,132 doors I put in my portfolio, I didn't walk in a bank. I didn't call a bank. I didn't submit an application. Nobody on my team filled out a loan application. No banks whatsoever. This is an absolute myth. And so as you guys are saying, I need to find a lender to get a loan, or I need to get an application, I need to find a loan officer that's gonna help me out. Guys, I like literally, just delete the whole thought process of a bank. They'll be obsolete at some point in the next 15 years anyway. No deals. This was the big thing for me. When I heard about creative finance, I thought creative finance was like needle in a haystack. Well, yeah, you're gonna find the one person in the whole town that could use this strategy. Yeah, that makes sense, but how do I find them? The reality is there are so many more creative finance deals than there are traditional deals. You just need to know how to look. I compare the analogy of haystack, needle. People say creative finance is the needle and traditional real estate is the haystack. I actually think it's the opposite. I think creative finance is so abundant that I don't think many traditional real estate deals even make sense. Those are the needles in the haystack. The haystack is creative finance. You need good credit. or any credit. Guys, I don't even know what my credit score is. Think about that for a second. You know what your credit score is. You know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I don't even know what my credit score is. I don't have any need for it. I don't use it. Nobody asks for it. There was a point when somebody says, oh, we don't use any credit, we use creative finance. I'm like, okay, so who is using their credit? Somebody on your team? Are you getting a co-signer? I thought there was a catch. When I say no credit needed whatsoever, I am being literal. There is no catch. There is no skeleton in the closet. That is absolutely literal. Need for a W-2. Guys, I'm unemployable. If it wasn't for real estate and creative finance, I would be on the streets. I don't have a job. Nobody would hire me. I'm a horrible employee. And I'm sitting over here buying real estate while you guys are saying, I got to stay at my W-2 so I could go to Daddy Bank and ask for permission to get money. I don't use a W-2. I don't need job history. Application, again, I have not done an application on a single property, RV parks, mobile home parks, multifamily, land, single family homes. I've never done an application. Nobody on my team has ever done an application. Nobody on my team has ever had to use their credit for a single purchase. Creative finance is hard. I actually think that creative finance is the easiest way to get started in real estate. And the reason for that is this. What makes real estate hard? Credit, cash, W-2 income, seasoned funds, finding a deal that makes sense for you. All of these things are needed in a traditional setting. You need to go to the bank. There's a lender involved. You need to get an appraiser. You need to have an inspection done. None of those things are needed in creative finance. Therefore, you don't have a challenging time getting into the deal. A traditional real estate transaction takes anywhere between 45 to 90 days. A creative finance transaction can be done in as little as 3 hours. I can literally go down to the county recorder's office, pay $17, and buy somebody's house subject to. I don't need a title company. I don't need an escrow officer. I don't need a closing attorney. I can do a deal directly with the seller, use the county recorder's office to record that transaction. I don't need anybody but me and the seller. Now, is this the way that I do my transactions? No. But when you take creative finance and you distill it to its purest form, it's just two people working out an agreement and writing it on a piece of paper and recording that piece of paper at the county recorder's office. Done. Nobody else needs to be involved. And so I look at traditional real estate as the most complicated way of getting into the real estate game. Ugly houses only. This is what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm only going to be looking for hoarder houses, foreclosure homes, probate houses. People inherited these houses. They're falling apart. They're decrepit. Guys, we're standing in an 8,000 square foot, $3.7 million home I bought with $1 down. My home in Mesa, Arizona is a $3 million home I bought with no money down. The majority of my houses are beautiful homes. Look at the house on 75 Maddox in Atlanta, Georgia, a $1.8 million home I bought for no money down. I buy luxury homes, I buy apartment complexes, RV parks that are already cash flowing with creative finance. I actually don't see a lot of ugly homes in the creative finance realm. I see sellers that are in pain, and I see sellers that also just want a really high number. Creative finance is the only transaction type that allows for a true win-win transaction. And I want to break down the deal of the house that we're standing in now to show you how I provide a win for the seller and a win for myself, and how traditional real estate, it's impossible, literally impossible for the buyer to get a good deal without the seller losing money in the transaction. Creative finance is the only type of transaction that allows the buyer to get a great deal and the seller to come out ahead. So let's get into the deal breakdown of the house here on Kaufman Lane in Kalispell, Montana. Let's start from the very beginning. Ask yourself this question every time somebody's breaking down a deal. Where does a deal start? A deal always starts with a motivated seller. A seller that is going through something, and I could list out all of the things. In fact, I should probably make a YouTube video just dedicated to all the reasons a seller sells a property. There are thousands of reasons, and I've never seen an identical one in all of the 7,000 transactions I've ever done. Never once. It's never identical. There's always a reason, and usually it's part emotional, part logical. This seller, his name is Bob. The reason Bob was in the process of selling this property is because he built another property about 40 miles away. This other property that Bob built, he built it as a spec. Spec means he speculated and he built a home that he thought was cool that the market would love to buy once he was done building. The challenge is he built this property and the market softened and the interest rates went up. Therefore, his buyers started leaving the marketplace. What Bob said was, I need to move out of the house on Kaufman because I need to refinance the interest rate that I'm stuck with because I'm in the middle of a construction loan, which are very high interest rates. The only way to refinance out of a construction loan is to actually live in the property. So Bob moved into the new property and left this property vacant. Bob now saying, all right, I need to fix up the property. I need to finish the barn. I need to do a bunch of things to the landscape. I need to put it on the market. I need to see if this house will sell in order for me to go get a loan on my new house. He's hemorrhaging money here. So there's pain here, right? There's a lot of pain in this situation here. I need to refinance this home. Pain, reason. So when people say, what is the reason? Why would somebody sell or finance such a house to you for $1 down? I'm telling you right now. There's pain here on this house. He also had just built this house. This house was built in 2022. It's brand new, but it was also unfinished. Unfinished meaning it's habitable, but the barn wasn't done and other little minor improvements were in the middle of being constructed. Bob says, I don't have the time, the energy. I need to get into this house as fast as possible. Also, Bob built this house for $2 million. And in his mind, he had a very specific number he wanted to sell in the market. And that number was $3.7 million. So in Bob's mind, he is married to a number. So a lot of times I tell people creative finance comes down to pain and gain. The seller here had both. He had pain in one house and the desire for gain in the other. If Bob put this house on the market in a traditional sense, number one, he probably would not have found a buyer at $3.7 million. Number two, that buyer would have come along and said, I want you to finish everything. I want it freshly painted. I want everything done. However, I come to Bob, I see the house is vacant. I see that there's some situation going on. And I say, Bob, I want to buy this property with seller finance or creative finance. Bob says, what is creative finance? And I said, Bob, creative finance is where I take over your existing mortgage and whatever equity you have in the house, I will also make a payment to you for that. I pay that to you for a number of years. It helps you avoid taxes and I get you the number you want, but you give me the terms that I need. Remember this, Bob is getting the number he wants, okay? And Pace, the buyer, is getting the terms he needs. Terms are 1,000 times more important than any purchase price you'll ever give, okay? So I asked for terms, he asked for price. I did not argue on the price. I didn't even verify whether the house was worth $3.7 million or not. I looked at a couple of things. I said, what can I do with the property? Ask yourself this question. Value of a property is determined by the buyer, yes, but really the value of a house is what you can do with it, not the purchase price. So Bob says, I want 3.7. I would be open to creative finance, but he then gave me my first sticking point. Bob says to me, Pace, I want $800,000 down, and I will then let you seller finance the remaining $2.9 million. I said, Bob, I understand tax situations. You just built this house in 2022. You are bound to make $1.7 million in profit on this house. And if you make $1.7 million and you take a deposit of 800 grand from me, $400,000 of that is going to go directly to who? Mr. Taxman. So why would I give you an $800,000 down payment when $400,000 of it will never reach your pocket? That's a $400,000 mistake on your part. Why don't we do a deal where I give you $0 down? And this works for most sellers because they understand they don't want to pay taxes. Most sellers in a seller finance situation are different than sellers in a subject to situation. Subject to is all about pain. Seller finance is primarily about gain, and it's a savvy seller that understands tax implications. Bob says, you're right, I don't want to pay $400,000 in taxes. I'm okay with a $0 down deal. So how did we get to $1 down? Well, Bob ran this transaction by his attorney. His attorney says, it's illegal to do $0 down. Obviously, that attorney is incorrect. So I had my attorney and Bob's attorney talk to each other, got his attorney educated. His attorney says, I'm still not okay with $0 down. I think there should be some sort of down payment. My reply via email was, would you be okay with $1 down? His attorney says, we would be just fine with that. Okay, so I did buy the property for $1 down is the structure. We'll talk about what terms are in just a second, but this is where the pain comes from. Do we understand the pain in the situation? Do we understand how the seller benefited by avoiding $400,000 in taxes? And more importantly, I'm gonna break down this deal and show you how Bob will make way more money than $3.7 million on this transaction, because this is the greatest investment he could ever make. All right, so let's talk about what terms are. For people that hear the word terms all the time, terms is something that I created. It's number one, purchase price, okay? Purchase price is the first thing you have to determine. The second part of terms is the down payment, okay? The down payment. I got a purchase price, what's my down payment? Number three is my interest rate, okay? And number four, finally, is the length of time. These are what terms are. So here are the terms of this deal. The purchase price is $3.7 million. Again, I don't know that this property is worth $3.7 million on the traditional market. But again, I'm not buying with traditional finance, so why do I go by traditional terms and traditional comping? I did not get traditional financing, I got creative financing. Here's how this deal worked. The seller has a $2 million mortgage on the property at 4% interest that I bought subject to. Okay, so this is technically what I would call a hybrid. It's part subject to and part seller finance. The seller has $1.7 million in equity, which I am giving the seller 4% interest. So this portion is seller finance because that's his equity. This portion is subject to because it's an existing debt with another bank. So I'm making technically one payment that gets split up to two different parties. Part of it goes to Bob, the other part of it goes to the bank. I'm giving Bob 4% interest on $1.7 million. And while you might say, well, Bob could get a lot more money somewhere else. You're right. But guess what would happen with Bob? If Bob sold this house right now and took the $1.7 million in cash, half of that money, okay, half of that money would go where? It would go to the IRS. But because of the way that I structure my deals, over a 10-year time frame, the seller will avoid all of their capital gains tax. Therefore, the seller did gain $850,000 by avoiding paying it to the IRS by selling it to me. That saves the seller almost $1 million. And so there's 850,000 reasons why the seller should not sell the house in traditional real estate and should sell it to me on seller finance, because immediately on day one, they made $850,000. And on top of that, I'm giving them 4% interest on the total $1.7 million. This seller is greatly benefited by not selling it on traditional finance. Now, it could give you 10 other reasons why it benefits them. They didn't have to clean up the property. We didn't have to go through appraisals. We didn't have to go through a bank. We didn't have to wait. We could literally close in a 2-day time frame. We closed at a company called Creative Title and Escrow, which is a title and escrow company that focuses on creative finance and these types of transactions. I used a top-tier TC, top-tier transaction coordinators, and they structured all the paperwork and made sure everything was easy. So this is the purchase price, and this is how the purchase price is broken down. Now, my down payment, $1. Pretty simple, $1. Why? Because you only, remember this, I want you to remember this, it's very important. The seller only gets taxed on money they receive. So if the seller only receives $1 at close of escrow, then this year in 2024, he will only have to pay taxes on that $1 rather than the full $1.7 million, okay? We will then spread the $1.7 million over the course of 10 years or even longer. Therefore, the seller will be able to mitigate and reduce his capital gains tax, meanwhile making an interest rate on the seller finance equity. Win, 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 win all day long. The interest rate, again, is 4%. We talked about that up there earlier. Why is it 4%? Well, we just married the interest rate that was existing on the subject to loan. Is very simple. The seller just says, yeah, if you give me 4%, which is what the bank is getting, I'd love to do the deal. My payment on this deal, by the way that we structured it with purchase price, interest, etc., all combined is $17,000. Now, I don't know the exact penny, so don't quote me on that. I could pull it up and tell you what the exact payment is, but it's $17,000. And we are going to break down in the next segment how I'm going to make money from this property rather than have it hemorrhage $17,000 every single month. Now, length of time. In a traditional subject to deal, I'm typically going full 30 years, and I'm just making the payments all the way through the whole entire term of that underlying payment. In this deal, Bob really wanted a 10-year term. He said, Pace, I really want to be done with this in 10 years, so I want to put a limit on my $1.7 million. If you want to keep the $2 million loan with the bank for the next 30 years, I'm okay with that, but my equity needs to be paid back in 10 years. So what I plan on doing in this situation is either A, paying him off in cash, right? Maybe I flip some houses or I wholesale some houses and I pay down his equity over 10 years. Or B, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, let's say interest rates go back down to 4%, I could just refinance this entire transaction, wipe out all his equity and wipe out the underlying mortgage and put it all in my name. I do that in situations, but it's pretty rare. I usually wait 5 to maybe 9 years before I do that. So length of time is 10 years. Now, most people looking at this deal are gonna say, $17,000, are you kidding me? I don't even make that per month. How could I afford a house like that? Well, you could afford a house like that. And let me show you exactly how I'm going to afford this house, even though the payment is $17,000. Okay, so if this house is going to cost me $17,000, how can I make money on it? Well, there are a lot of people that obviously live in houses that are $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a month or even more. I have friends that own $20 million homes, $30 million homes. They're not trying to cash flow on their properties. They're just raising their children there and they make enough money to afford that. So if that's you and you're looking for a luxury property, in the next segment, I'll show you how you can find these types of deals. But in this segment, we're gonna break down how I have chosen to utilize this property because this is not my all year long home. During the calendar year, we will only be in Montana from May all the way through September, about 4.5 months, which gives me the ability to rent this property out for 7.5 months. We hired a company that manages weddings and will also manage other types of events. So A, we're gonna be doing weddings at the property. We're going to be doing masterminds. We're going to be doing men's retreats. So imagine having a property like this that can sleep 20 people. I can have marriage retreats. In fact, one of our marriage retreats we are going to be doing is coming up. We're going to be doing big events here. We will not be doing it by Airbnb. We'll be doing larger events that are a little bit more planned. So we talked to the venue, the company that's going to be managing these for us, and they said that they will average about $13,000 per week renting this property out. So it's a little under $2,000 a day. So about $1,800 a day, renting a 20-acre parcel, a barn that you can have events in, private dinners, a big home that sleeps 20 people. You can do this in the wintertime, you can do this in the summertime, etc. But they will average $13,000 a week. So let's do the math here. If I can rent this property for 7.5 months out of the year, and those 7.5 months, you multiply that by 4 weeks per average, multiply that 30 by 13,000, this property will generate $390,000 in a year. Boom. So $390,000 a year that will come in, managed by another company. Now the $13,000 is my portion. They said that they will add their portion on top of it and that's how they make their money. So $390,000 a year on a property like this. Okay, cool. So $390,000 divided by 12, that means this property will bring in an average of $32,000 a month. I have the payment for $17,000. Plus I have another $10,000 in miscellaneous expenses. And I'm also going to be hiring a full-time employee here for about $6,000 per month. So this property will cost me about $32,000 to $33,000 a month. I'll have a full-time person working on the maintenance, handling the property, cleaning the property, doing everything full-time. This will be their full-time job, working on this massive property, mowing the lawn, trimming the hedges, dealing with the animals, working in the garden, preventing bad things from happening, fixing things the day of instead of us having to call a maintenance person. And so essentially, the $390,000 a year that I will bring in for the venue will allow me to have a property paid for by other businesses that I can take up in the summertime as my Montana retreat. Now, could I have just used this as my personal residence and not turn it into an event center? Of course, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be an investor and I want to house hack everything that I'm doing. So this property will make money or at least break even on a deal, only $1 out of my pocket. Okay, so if I'm a real estate investor or a home buyer looking to buy a subject to or seller finance deal, where do I do these deals? Where can I find a subject to deal? Where can I find a seller finance deal? If you're focusing on single family, these are my top choices. Number one is startwithprivy.com. What Privy is going to show you is on market listed properties for sale. The challenge with Privy is that you will have to do the work of reaching out to the agent and pitching terms. For those people that are like, I don't know how to pitch terms, well, we've got other videos on the channel all about how I pitch subject to. You can go and watch those. Zillow, same thing. You're gonna be going on Zillow and you're going to be pitching. MLS with a real estate agent, same thing. You're gonna have to pitch terms. What I would be doing if I'm doing SubTo or seller finances, I would focus on expired listings. Okay, we have an expired listings training down in the description below as well. So go check that out. Investor lift. Now this is where it becomes really, really easy. Okay, if you go to Investor Lift, I will give you guys a link in the description to Investor Lift. Investor Lift has my students from the SubTo community posting their SubTo deals on Investor Lift that are already negotiated, already contracted. You don't have to learn how to negotiate. You can just go buy a deal literally right now. So when people say, where are these SubTo and seller finance deals? Where are they? Investor Lift. And you can go in the link in the description down below. Now, if you are in the SubTo community, you know this, we do more SubTo transactions than anybody else, and all you have to do is wait in the Facebook group inside our private community for about 15 minutes, and you'll see a new juicy deal pop up every 15 freaking minutes. Last year, we did $5 billion in transactions in subject to and seller finance deals. Now, we also have a free version, which is Creative Finance with Pace Morby Facebook group. We have about 160,000 members in this Facebook group. A lot of them are newbies that don't know exactly what they're doing, which is why it's a free Facebook group. We're giving free value and helping people connect with our students. But you can go into the Creative Finance with Pace Morby Facebook group and reach out and see if people have deals. There are about 100 deals a day posted in this Facebook group. So right here, okay, these three are the easy button. You can be in the SubTo community, you can go on Investor Lift to buy deals from the SubTo community, or you can go on the Creative Finance with Pace Morby Facebook group. These deals are already contracted, negotiated, structured, and paperwork is done, escrow is open, ready for you to be the buyer. It is truly that simple. So when people say there's no deals, no, you're just not educated. And when you hear somebody else say there's no SubTo deals, just say, oh, that dude's uneducated. They don't know, they haven't watched Pace video, they haven't subscribed, they haven't done those types of things. Now, one of my favorite websites, if I had to go do a deal right now on market, I would go to landwatch.com. There are 13,000 creative finance listings right now. 13,000 creative finance listings right now on landwatch.com. Now, there are many more. You could go to title companies and ask for expired listings. You could go to foreclosures and call and door knock and all of those types of things. But these are the easiest ones that most people gravitate to because you can do them from your computer. You're not gonna be able to door knock from your computer. You have to get out there and go to the foreclosures. So here is the list of single family homes. The easy button are right here. You could buy a deal today. Like literally right now, I could go on Investor Lift and type in a subject to search. We have partnered with Investor Lift so that you guys can see those types of deals. So let's jump into multifamily and some other creative structures like RV parks, mobile home parks, and where do I find those? All right, let's say that I want to buy multifamily, or I want to buy an RV park, or I want to buy mobile home parks, things of that nature. Guys, there's always places like PropStream, okay? PropStream is a great place, but here's the challenge with PropStream is that you have to learn how to negotiate, right? Because you are reaching out to sellers directly. Same thing here when you go to Start with Privy, you will be able to find commercial properties, fourplexes, sixplexes, etc. You'll go to Start with Privy and you will have to learn how to negotiate. If you want to learn how to negotiate, the best salesperson on planet Earth is me. Why? Because the best salesperson is the person who cares about their prospect and their customer the most, and I don't know anybody that cares more about their sellers and their agents more than me. Now, 3, I love multifamily. The last mobile home park that we bought came off Crexy.com. You can go to Crexy.com right now, and you can filter for owner finance, seller finance, subject to, and deals will pop up nationwide. This is gas stations. This is multifamily, apartments, hotels, dirt, all sorts of things. Crexy is awesome. Another one is loopnet.com. Now, I have heard a lot of times, my friend Vina Jetty says to me, oh, Pace, LoopNet is where deals go to die. Crexy is where deals go to die. No, those are where deals go that somebody that knows creative finance needs to revive these deals. These are typically deals that somebody else couldn't sell in the traditional market. And so they put them on Crexy or LoopNet, and somebody like me steps in and yeah, of course I can lowball them on a cash offer, but I can also lock up deals. The 2 RV parks that we bought here in Montana, we've got YouTube videos about those breakdowns, Crexy. The mobile home parks that we bought down in Yuma are from loopnet.com. These are not where deals go to die. These are where people that know creative finance go to thrive, okay? The 5th one that I really love, I've mentioned this in the previous one, is landwatch.com. Landwatch is really interesting because you can buy seller finance land all over the country. You can build on it, you can wholesale it, you can do tons of deals. Millions and millions and millions of dollars are waiting for you at landwatch.com. There are currently, right now, as of today, 13,000 seller finance and subject to deals on landwatch.com for you to take advantage of. You could also go to investorlift.com. Investorlift is a really great way for you to find deals that are already under contract. 7, SubTo community. Guys, the SubTo community is, as you already know, everybody that is in the SubTo community just rants and raves about how amazing it is. If you're having a hard time getting a deal, just buy a deal from a SubTo student. They've already learned how to negotiate from me. They've learned the paperwork from me. They've learned how to get in there and get the deal done and close the seller from me. And they bundle these up and they'll sell the contract to you. All you have to do is pay them an assignment fee. You could just go into the SubTo community by joining it, or you could go into our free Facebook group, Creative Finance with Pace Morby, and link in with them, tell them exactly what you're looking for, and they'll go out and find those deals and assign them to you. So there you go, multifamily and other properties can all be found in these locations. Okay, so we've broken down multiple places for you to go find these deals. Some of them are already contracted, so you don't have to know how to negotiate or even know how to do the paperwork. You can just buy them from existing SubTo community members like I do. Last year, I bought $100 million in real estate just from my students, people that joined the SubTo community. You can do the same thing. Now, if you're having a hard time saying, well, I don't understand the whole process, every single month in our free Facebook group, I do a 2-day challenge where I start a business from scratch, LLC and all, and I go out and I start doing outreach and I show you the first couple of steps to take in order to generate leads, opportunities for your wholesale, fix and flip, and buy and hold business. So go into the free Creative Finance with Pace Morby Facebook group. The link will be in the description, and jump into one of our challenges that we do every single month for 2 days. Come into the live chat, meet with everybody, and it's a great way for you to get your feet wet, dip your toes into the creative finance real estate space, and see how we do what we do. What are the risks associated with doing subject to and seller finance deals? Well, we're gonna get into that video right now, and I wanna start off with this list I just created. This list is pretty intense, and it might even scare you from doing real estate investing altogether. Here we are, let's start off with squatters. If you guys are doing investing in states like California, Washington, Oregon, Illinois, other places where they hate landlords, you're gonna have a hard time with squatters. Squatters could mean also vacancies. It could also mean upkeep and deferred maintenance. These things cost significant dollars, right? Then the next thing you do is you have tenants not paying. Think about an economic change where people are losing their jobs. There's more foreclosures going on. There's more layoffs going on, which makes it so your tenants cannot pay their bills. If your tenants can't pay their bills, guess what happens? You end up having vacancy, and then you have the ability to run into a default. You might default or lose the property. Now, my biggest nightmare is HOAs or neighbors or even neighborhoods changing. And if that happens, you have a resale risk. You might have lawsuits from people in your neighborhood. I've been in lawsuits with HOAs before. It absolutely happens. If these things are gonna happen, like natural disasters, damage, mold, pests, these kind of things, I'm in my Montana house right now and we have field mice that come and sneak into the attic. These things are a risk associated with buying real estate. If these things happen, the likelihood of you defaulting or losing the property actually goes way up, right? So these are things you have to really worry about. Economic shifts. Are we right now heading into a softening economy and you therefore have to change your focus on how you want to be a real estate investor? Should I be going out right now and doing Airbnbs, or should I be focusing on affordability? If I focus on affordability, that would be co-living. We have videos about that on the channel, by the way. Economic shifts, right? Insurance costs. This is a big one. This is absolutely a massive one. You look at states like Florida and Texas that in the last couple of years, they've doubled their insurance costs, making it so real estate investors that might have been cash flowing $500 a month 2 years ago are now cash flowing $100 a month. And now does it become worth it having real estate investments? Property tax, this is another one that goes up. As the government fails to manage their money that they collect from your properties, what happens to them is they go, let's vote to raise property taxes. This is a great way for them to balance their budget and extract more capital from you. Property taxes go up. They absolutely do go up. And guess what else goes up? Utilities. Utilities will continue to go up. The cost of power, the cost of water, the cost of internet, these things will continue to go up. So even though you might be raising your rents, is it going to outpace the growth of utility costs going up as well? Sunk costs, this is a big one for me, is that sometimes you'll buy a property, even after an inspection, after a walkthrough, you'll find things inside the property that absolutely kill the deal. We had a deal about 5 years ago where we bought the property and found a crack in the foundation, and I had to go underneath and pull out the foundation, have stilts on it, pour in new concrete, cost me 50,000 bucks. Luckily, it still made it a deal, but there are times where the inspector will miss something. Could I go back and sue the inspector and spend $25,000 and saying, you owe me this money? Yeah, but the chances are that inspector doesn't have any money to pay for that thing anyway, so it's just a sunk cost. Here's a big one. This is probably one of the biggest ones in real estate investing, is that your plans don't work out. Let's say that you're fixing and flipping and you identify a house that you buy for 200, think it's gonna sell for 400, you get to put it on market and you get offers at 320. Oh my gosh, now you're in trouble, right? That's fixing and flipping for you. It does happen. What about when you decide, I'm gonna do an Airbnb or a VRBO or a midterm rental, I put it on the market, and 2 years after this thing is crushing it, Marriott Group comes in and spends $1 billion of lobbying against Airbnbs and shuts down Atlanta, Las Vegas, and other markets from your ability to have those properties there. That happened to me. I had 75 Airbnbs between Atlanta and Vegas, and both areas shut down the ability to do Airbnb. So I had to spend a year converting those properties into co-living, which is the wave of the future, by the way, midterm rentals, and other forms of assets. I had to get away from Airbnb, not because at the time it didn't make sense, but because something outside of my control changed my plans. Now, we've gone through a pretty extensive list. If you ask ChatGPT, what are the risks? ChatGPT has about 20 times more risks on it that probably are not that big of risk, but there are so many risks associated with investing in real estate. But I do have a surprise for you. Not one of these examples is exclusive to creative finance. This is something you will deal with any type of investment, traditional real estate or creative finance. And so when people ask me the question as if traditional real estate doesn't have any risks, I sit there paused going, what are the risks associated with subject to and seller finance? I just can't rack my brain around it. So today what we did is we broke down a list of things that are exclusive to subject to investing, seller finance investing, and we're gonna get into that list next. All right, we put together a list with ChatGPT's help about the risks associated with subject to and seller finance. Let's go through them and see if any of them are legit or not. Number one, due on sale clause, absolutely legit. We're gonna get into that in a minute. Existing loan terms, the buyer is bound by the existing loan terms interest rate and repayment terms. That's exactly what I want in subject to. I want the loan terms. That is why I'm buying the house in subject to. I wouldn't buy the house subject to if the loan terms were not favorable. ChatGPT is wrong. Number three, mortgage rate adjustments. If the existing mortgage rate has an adjustable rate, that is a big deal. I also tell my students in subject to that you should never have more than one adjustable rate mortgage in a portfolio of 20 houses. So that's a big one. Let's put that on here, adjustable rate. But the thing is, you are not being forced to buy a house subject to. You, as the buyer, make the determination whether you sign the contract and you follow through with the contract at the end. This is not a risk that you wouldn't know about going into it. So I tell people, if you're gonna do adjustable interest rates, do 1 out of 20 houses in your portfolio maximum. And the reason for that is because if that rate does go up, the other 19 houses in your portfolio will not. Therefore, the cash flow from the other 19 houses will far exceed however much money the interest rate went up on your one adjustable rate house. Number 4, seller default. If the seller has not been making timely mortgage payments, the property may be risk of foreclosure. This is actually legit. I will tell you right now is that the seller defaulting is a problem. However, it's not a seller problem, it's a buyer problem. If you have not gone through and joined the SubTo community, you're not gonna understand how the seller should never be involved in that transaction ever again. If you have a seller defaulting on the mortgage that you took over, that's because you failed to do it properly. You do not make payments to the seller. If you buy the house from the seller, you do not make the mortgage payments to the seller and then hope the seller makes the mortgage payments to the mortgage. That is not how SubTo is done. ChatGPT obviously has not joined the SubTo community. ChatGPT thinks it knows the information. The seller should never default because you own the property and you are making mortgage payments through a servicing company, and the servicing company makes sure all of those things are taken care of. All right. 6, insurance complications. Nope, not at all. If you just go to SubToInsurance.com, you'll never worry about SubTo insurance, seller finance insurance. Literally, I have a gentleman over there at a company called SubToInsurance.com. His name is Lucas, and he will take care of you. He'll switch over the insurance. He'll take care of you 100%. SubToInsurance.com. Stop giving me these excuses, BS. Property tax liens, that deals with traditional real estate. Uncooperative seller, okay, that goes into what if the seller changes their mind? What if I buy a house, like the house I'm standing in right now in Kalispell, Montana, and the seller decides a year later, man, I'm really not happy that I sold that house to you and I really want the house back. Well, good thing that this is all legally done through title and escrow companies, and it's recorded at the county recorder's office, and it's a good thing that these types of transactions have been around for over 500 years. They cannot contest the transaction. And if they do, they're gonna have to sue me. And I guess they could sue me for any reason, but what's gonna happen is the judge is going to see that it was done through a closing attorney, a closing escrow company, or a title company, and we got title insurance to protect me from the seller ever changing their mind. The seller cannot change their mind, and guess who owns the property? Does the seller own the property or do I own the property? You're right, I do. Okay, legal challenges. Subject to deals can be legally complex and may face scrutiny or challenges from lender or other parties. That would be due on sale clause, so that's redundant. I'm still only down to 5 risks. Maintenance, okay, that's traditional real estate. Equity loss, traditional real estate. Credit impact. Since the mortgage remained in this, okay, there's a risk for the seller here. This is great. Seller risk. Seller has a credit risk. 100% do agree with that. That is specific to subject to. Difficulty selling. You shouldn't be buying the property if you can't sell it, and we'll go through that in just a minute. Incomplete transfer, title and escrow companies solve that. If you guys just use Creative Title and Escrow will handle all of your creative finance transactions. Number 15, incomplete transfer. The buyer may not have full legal ownership rights. Guys, if you just go through Creative Title and Escrow, you never have to worry about subject to and seller finance transactions being done incorrectly. 16, title insurance issues. Same thing, go to Creative Title and Escrow. They will take care of you. Lender's consent. Again, this is right here. It just keeps hammering the same points. Due on sale clause. Homeowners association. That has to do with traditional real estate. Property condition, traditional real estate. 20, legal and regulatory changes. Regular traditional real estate. So far, I have 6 items that would be specific to seller finance and subject to. So let's go through them. Due on sale clause. Guys, we have 7 videos all about due on sale clause. I've had the due on sale clause called on me multiple times. It is a risk that is associated with doing subject to. Even if you do subject to deals correctly, you will run into the due on sale clause at some point in your career. We've done thousands of these transactions. We've had a total of about 10 called. That's including 5 for myself and 5 for my students out of thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions. Seller changes their mind, physically impossible. The seller cannot come back and take the property back from you in a subject to a seller finance, a lease option. It's illegal for them to do that. It's impossible for them to do that. Adjustable rate mortgages. If you are buying a subject to deal with an adjustable rate, You should have known that that is a possibility for that rate to go up. You also should know that you should never buy more than one out of every 20 subject to deals that you do. This is something I teach inside the SubTo community. The seller defaulting. This is impossible if you know what you're doing. Sadly, a lot of people just watch my YouTube channel. They don't go hire a top tier TC. A top tier TC is somebody who handles the paperwork and makes sure that the transaction is structured properly. And they do make their payments to the seller, hoping the seller goes to the bank and makes those payments. From the way that we've perfected creative finance, we do not involve the seller ever again. After we close escrow on a subject to seller finance, lease option, wrap, or any other type of transaction, we pretend as if the seller is dead. I no longer want to involve the seller in anything, a refinance, a sell of the property. The seller is never involved ever again if you do it the right way. Number 6, seller's credit. So this is a big deal. Okay, in subject to, this is absolutely a big deal for the seller. There are so many sellers, I've bought their home in foreclosure. So a house that's in foreclosure, I go to the seller directly, they're already $30,000 behind on their payments. Do you think they care about their credit? They absolutely don't care about their credit, or else they would have made the payments on their house. I, utilizing subject to, actually improve their credit because I catch the mortgage payments up and I now start making the mortgage payments again, effectively putting that mortgage in a good standing situation. Therefore, in 2 years, 3 years, they can go buy another house even though that mortgage stays in their name. I have fixed their credit using subject to. Okay, well, what about the sellers that sold their house to me subject to because they had no equity? That seller is not in foreclosure, they just don't have enough equity to sell their property. That seller says, man alive, I've got to weigh my risk. Do I want to let my house go and write a check for $30,000 or $40,000 to sell it on the traditional market? Or do I want to run the risk of having a guy like Pace take my mortgage and just hope and pray that he makes those mortgage payments? That is an associated risk 100%. And so the question that you would ask yourself if you are the seller is, what happens if the buyer does default? Do I have the ability to take the property back? The answer is yes, you do. And this is one of the things that we perfected in creative finance. Creative finance has been done for hundreds of years, but it wasn't until me and my team came along that we perfected the process. How does the seller get their house back in the event of a default? How does the seller's credit actually improve? How do we remove the seller from the transaction after I buy it subject to or seller finance that I no longer need their help? There's hundreds of little micro things that we've fixed in the process along with creative finance. So at the end of the day, there really are not that many risks. This is a non-issue. Can't sell that deal, that's a non-issue. Adjust rate your mortgage, non-issue. Seller defaulting, non-issue. The two things that are true risks in a subject to or seller finance deal are these two: due on sale clause and the seller's credit. But we've addressed both of those today, and hopefully you understand that really traditional real estate has just as many risks associated with it as creative finance does. In fact, the way that creative finance is structured is I remove a lot of the risks associated with them the way that I structure my deals. So when I have a due on sale clause or the seller's credit, I have a way to protect the seller from either one of those two happening. Therefore, only having risks associated with creative finance that are also associated with traditional real estate. All right, so we took the time today. We told you how we bought the deal, where we found the deal, how it benefited the seller, how it benefited me, and why would a seller even do a deal like this? And if you are somebody that's saying, man, this was an unbelievable video, I don't necessarily want to buy a big farm pace, but I do want to start building my portfolio. I want to buy a forever home for myself. Well, we did an amazing full breakdown of a subject to deal on a whiteboard. It is so popular, it still gets 20,000 views every single month. Unbelievable. Head over to there by clicking on the link on the screen right now. Now, if you're a seller that's saying, wow, this was pretty cool. Bob the seller was able to sell his property to Pace at a price that made sense for both Pace and for Bob the seller. If I'm in a situation and I've got lack of equity, I want to sell my house, but I want more information of the things I should watch out for, the questions I should ask, what type of buyer should I be looking for, what are my next steps? We also made an amazing video a couple of months ago all about what should a seller ask when selling their house on creative finance. We will put that link on the screen right now. If you're somebody that is like me, that you need monkey see, monkey do, and you want somebody to walk you through the process and you say, I need a community of people, not only to help me out through the next step, but to live life with as investors and do deals together and JV with and partner with each other, That is what the SubTo community is all about. We are not a mentorship. I honestly am over mentorships. I'm all about community-based things. You guys see me hanging out with my community all the time, whitewater rafting, flying in Black Hawk helicopters. These are people that I bought $100 million in real estate with. That is a community, not a mentorship. And if you guys are looking for more connection, more training, more hands-on learning, and more live Zooms, that is what the SubTo community is all about. So click on the link down in the description or go over to subto.com. And guys, we'll see you in the next video.